Public affairs programming on Look TV is underwritten by the generous support of Pinnell's Restaurant, classic Italian American food since 1922, and Stored Tech, technology solutions for computers, networks, and phone. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
1922, Babe Ruth debuts with the Yankees. WGY signs on air. Exterminator wins the Saratoga Cup, and Pinnell's Restaurant opens its doors for the very first time. For 5 generations, Pinnell's has been preparing delicious Italian food, served in a comfortable, home-like setting where everyone is welcome. 90 years of authentic Italian recipes, 90 years of the freshest ingredients, and 90 years of the finest classic Italian dishes, all made daily by hand. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga dining tradition since 1922.
Most cybersecurity firms deal only with prevention, the systems that block hackers and viruses. Stored Tech knows the root cause is actually good people doing bad things. So we offer a security training program which includes certifying all participants to show they understand the basics.
Technology solutions for computers, networks, and phones. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
The Saratoga City Council meeting, an inside look at the decisions that affect you and our community.
Good evening. Welcome to City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 16th. It is 6:55. We have one public hearing on the schedule for tonight, and that is the 2021 water and sewer resolution. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Sirocco.
Thank you, Mayor. As you stated, this is the 2021 water and sewer resolution, the public hearing. The water resolution for 2021 includes no changes from 2020 resolution. There are no rate or fee increases for water customers in 2021. However, the sewer resolution for 2021 includes an increase of $4 on the basic service charge for all customers. This is the only increase. This is the only increase included for sewer customers in 2021, and is a result of sewer charge increases from the Saratoga County Sewer District over the last 5 years. These county increases have been outlined for the council and public previously and are described each year when the resolutions are passed. To provide further information on the county sewer charges from 2016 to 2020, the county charges to the city increased 43%, from 2.7 million to 3.9 million. During the same period, the city portion of the sewer budget grew by only 4%. While we have maintained our costs, the county charges are outside of the city's control and are determined by the Saratoga County Sewer Commission. To account for this significant increase from the county, sewer rates have been incrementally increased and fund balance was used to cover deficits. Instead of passing a 43% increase onto water customers, a gradual increase has been planned. There will be some relief for the county sewer charges in 2021 as they decrease their charges by approximately $300,000. Saratoga County has provided no information that this reduction will extend beyond 2021. Unfortunately, even with this reduced charge, the basic service charge increase is necessary. DPW and Utilities Department are further reviewing methods to fairly balance the sewer charges across customers. And we are setting up a meeting with the county to discuss their charges and potential future increases. If anybody wanted to speak at the public hearing.
Yep. So if anybody would like to speak from the public, you could just raise your hand and let us know. And this is referring to the 2021 water and sewer resolutions. So Commissioner, are we closing this tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I believe it's on my agenda
Okay.
to vote on this tonight.
Great. All right. I don't see anybody raising their hands. Let me ask again if anybody wants to comment on the 2021 water and sewer resolution. Okay, then we are closing that public hearing and we're voting on that this evening. So with that, we have 1 minute to wait before we could start our meeting. So we'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask the secretary for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Frank?
Present.
Commissioner Madigan?
Present.
Commissioner Scirocco?
Here.
Commissioner Dalton?
Present.
Mayor Kelly?
Here.
Supervisor Veach?
Here.
Supervisor Gaston?
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on the agenda is our public comment period. I ask that you try to keep your comments brief, up to 2 minutes. There will be a bell to signify the end of your time. We will probably be extending this. I think we've had over close to 50 registered here this evening. So at this time, if you are wishing to speak at public comment period, could you please raise your hand so I could get an estimation? Okay, I'm going to ask again, if you're wishing to speak this evening, could you please raise your hand? Okay, so as a reminder, public comment is not a dialogue or discussion with the council members. However, at the end of the public comment period, any council member may respond to a comment. Anyone who wishes to address the council may do so now by raising their hand, and we will be calling on you. Please state your name and address and provide your comments. I'm going to start with Catherine Dennett. Can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
My name is Catherine Dennett. I am 22 years old. I am from Saratoga, and my home address, 11 Sydney Hill Road, Saratoga Springs, New York.
Okay, go ahead.
Comment,
please.
Thank you. I just have a short comment to read. Hello, City Council members. In the wake of a tumultuous year of injustice and awakening, and thanks to the relentless work of community advocates, Saratoga, along with the rest of our country, is at a moment of change. And it is our responsibility as a community to be an active part in directing that change. The Police Reform Task Force has spent months thoroughly examining and researching policing policies and practices in Saratoga Springs, while taking a deep consideration of our community's wants and needs. As your constituent, an emerging and engaged member of Future Saratoga, I'm writing to ask that you take serious time and consideration in reviewing the intensive and important work that the task force has put in before voting on the police reform recommendations. The community has spoken, and every one of our voices matter. This attention to reinvention, however, gives no guarantee of real change. Therefore, it is the actions of our local government that are of the utmost importance at this time. Several of the principles outlined in the recommendations, appropriately entitled Reinvention Plan Towards a Community-Centered Justice Initiative, addresses grievances that have been felt throughout the country. And in looking at the stories shared in the police reform survey, Saratoga is no exception. These proposals are not radical. What they offer us are new ways of thinking about policing and public safety beyond the parameters of our current, outdated, and flawed model. This is not to say that many things do not work. This is to say that they do not work as well as they could. They do not work for all, and they cause harm to some. Fostering a community of respect and reconciliation, accountability and acknowledgement, transparency and trust begins and ends with a commitment to openness and community involvement. A serious review of the recommendations and an attentive and caring ear during the public hearings would both empower the community to be a part of creating this world that we exist in together and help inform the council of what their people need from the people.
Can you wrap it up? You're over your 2 minutes. Can you just wrap it up?
Sorry, I and my fellow Saratogians request and urge that you deeply study the tireless work of this task force and allow us to join the conversation with our local elected officials so we can actively foster justice in this community that we share together. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
If you would like to speak, please raise your hands. Sarah Marlin. Can you unmute, please, and put your video on?
Hi, my name is Sarah Marlin. I'm 23. I live in Saratoga Springs, New York. I'd rather not give my address if that's possible. But I am just wanted to reiterate, I agree with some of the things Keith just said, and I'm just urging you to work to review the task force recommendations. The task force, where many of you selected the representatives that are now on it. I'm also just concerned about the meeting that's placed on March 31st, the night before recommendations are supposed to be adopted or passed. I'm curious to see the plan of what those meetings are going to look like. And I'm curious if there's a possibility that meeting could be pushed up closer so you have more time to take the public's input at that hearing and incorporate it into your understandings of your hopeful passings and adoptions of recommendations by this task force. I see a meeting that allows for 5 hours of review to be concerning with making an actual decision. So I'm hoping an additional special meeting, like has been done in the past with the city council, could be added the week before that, or even this week. I'm sure you'd have many public members who'd be willing to sit in and give their opinions. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Please raise your hand. Molly Dunn, please unmute and put your video on, please.
Hi there, I'm Molly Dunn. I live in downtown Saratoga Springs. I just wanted to reiterate what Catherine and Sarah both stated. I'd also like to say I would love to see a little bit more transparency on the actual voting for the police reform. I would love to see if it's just a unanimous yes or no, or if separate parts of the police reform are going to be voted on, how that process is going to take place, what each of the meetings coming up are going to be focused on. So I would love that all to be available to the public prior to the meetings.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay, it doesn't look like I have anybody else here that's wanting to speak. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to raise your hand, and then I'm going to close public comment. Okay, so we will move on then to our agenda. I'll close public comment. Any comments from the council?
I think we should make sure we point out that we do have a meeting on March 23rd, and then the next meeting on March 31st, specifically for further public feedback and comments from the public.
Okay.
Reminding them.
We'll get to that when we get to the task force. Yep. Anything else?
I guess I would just want to say that all our meetings are going to be available to the public. So in terms of transparency, when we vote on the resolution that will be put forward, the public will be invited to watch us vote. So it will be a very transparent process.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Okay, we have no executive session this evening. So on to our consent agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the consent agenda? Then I move that the City Council approve the consent agenda as included with this agenda. This is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The matter passes. At this time, I would like to bring up my number 10 item. I'm going to move it up on my agenda to my number 1 item, Police Reform Task Force, because I know that that's what everybody's sitting on here for. And I don't want to go through my entire agenda and let them wait. I'm going to bring in Vince DeLeonardis, our city attorney, and to start us into this discussion. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Mayor. So as you will recall, on June 12th, 2020, Governor Cuomo issued Executive Order 203 entitled Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. On August 4th, 2020, the Police Reform Task Force was established by the mayor with input from the council. And on August 19th, the task force held their first meeting. That was less than 7 months ago. The task force was given an enormous assignment, while unfortunately not given a lot of time in which to complete it, but they did. On March 5th, the task force completed and released to the City Council and the public a 108-page report entitled Reinvention Plan Toward a Community-Centered Justice Initiative, which contains more than 50 recommendations intended to improve the policies and practices of the Saratoga Springs Police Department. The members of the task force included Jason Golub, Camille Daniels, Winston Grady Willis, Terry Diggory, Chuck Caputo, Daisha Harris, Cece Hayes, Andrew Cephas, Stephen Boxley, Kristen Dart, Kim Galvin, Chief Shane Crooks, and me as a non-voting member. The work of the 13-member task force was thorough and extensive. Their effort and commitment to this important assignment was truly impressive, and they should all be commended. As I indicated at the March 2nd City Council meeting, it is now up to the Council to review and deliberate on the proposed recommendations and determine which of those recommendations will be implemented and how. Since the release of the task force recommendations, I have met with each of you as members of City Council along with Chief Crooks and have put together a draft resolution for your consideration based upon the input and guidance I have received. For the benefit of the public and the council, I will read the resolution, and in a moment, Lisa will put the document on the screen so that everyone can follow along. At the end, the matter will be opened up for discussion among the council so that I can have direction on any possible edits, revisions, or additions to the resolution. The resolution will be placed on the city's website, and by close of business tomorrow, I will post in red line form any changes made to the document which come out of this evening's meeting. There will be a special City Council meeting as indicated next Tuesday, March 23rd at 7 p.m., where we will allow for public comment and further council deliberation. Any changes to the document will again be posted on the city's website in red line form for public view. There will then be an additional special City Council meeting scheduled for Wednesday, March 31st at 7 p.m., where public comment will again be allowed and the resolution presented for a discussion and vote. So Lisa, if you don't mind putting up the resolution.
No. Yes, it's there. Thank you, Lisa.
It's there. Thank you. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Saratoga Springs, New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Plan. Whereas on June 12th, 2020, Governor Andrew M. Cuomo issued Executive Order number 203, requiring local governments, including the City of Saratoga Springs, to perform a comprehensive review of existing police force deployments, strategies, policies, procedures, and practices, and with input from community members and stakeholders to develop a plan to improve such deployment strategies, policies, procedures, and practices. And whereas Executive Order number 203 was issued by the governor in response to an outpouring of protests and demonstrations occurring throughout the country following the police-involved deaths of unarmed Black and African American civilians, and the ongoing demand for change, action, and accountability for the mistreatment and discrimination of such civilians, and in an effort to eliminate racial inequities in policing, to modify and modernize policing strategies, policies, procedures, and practices, to better address the particular needs of communities of color, to promote public safety, improve community engagement, and to foster trust. And whereas on August 4th, 2020, the mayor, in consultation with City Council, established the Saratoga Springs Police Reform Task Force and appointed 11 members of the community, together with the police chief and the city attorney, to serve on the task force and develop recommendations for the City Council to improve police force deployment strategies, policies, procedures, and practices in accordance with the governor's executive order. And whereas the task force held more than a dozen public meetings since its establishment, both in person and virtually, conducted research, engaged community members and stakeholders through a public forum and a community survey, and encouraged public comment by providing opportunities at each and every meeting and on the city's website. And whereas the task force established 12 subcommittees in an effort to further enlarge community input and participation through focused review of identified areas of concern, including, among others, police culture, training and education, use of force and related policies, transparency, and accountability. And whereas, following a thorough and extensive review, the task force, with involvement and input from community members, developed a reinvention plan toward a community-centered justice initiative, which contains a multitude of recommendations for the City Council to consider as part of the overall effort to improve police force deployments, strategies, policies, procedures, and practices. And whereas the task force recommendations have been made available for public review and comment, provided to community entities and stakeholders identified in the executive order, and reviewed, discussed, and deliberated by the City Council with due consideration of comments from community members and stakeholders. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council, in accordance with the Saratoga Springs City Charter and Governor Cuomo's Executive Order Number 203, makes the following findings and determinations on the identified task force recommendations as contained in the enumerated sections of the reinvention plan toward a community-centered justice initiative, a true and complete copy of which is annexed here too. Section 1, Culture and Training. The City Council agrees with the task force and acknowledges the prevalence of racism which has existed throughout history in the United States. The City Council previously adopted a resolution on February 16, 2021, declaring that systemic racism must be challenged and eliminated, and pledged to exercise its authority to promote racial equity and fairness in the city of Saratoga Springs, to develop and cultivate a diverse and inclusive culture, and to eliminate discriminatory systems and practices. The City Council acknowledges that many of the task force recommendations contained in Section 1 have already been undertaken or implemented by the police department, including initiatives relating to community-based activities and assertive outreach, efforts to partner with local educational institutions to develop programs, recruiting activities that target broader markets for racial and cultural diversity, and training that focuses on de-escalation, procedural justice, and protests. The department is also currently seeking accreditation and has already submitted the necessary application to DCJS. Notwithstanding, the Council acknowledges that additional education and training is appropriate and hereby directs the Chief of Police to implement broader educational opportunities and additional training programs consistent with the task force recommendations, including the utilization of an independent external consultant once funding becomes available and budgetary appropriations have been provided. Pending such appropriations, the Chief shall continue efforts to partner with local academic institutions, groups, and organizations toward developing educational opportunities and programs that are not dependent upon funding. Section 2, Policy. The City Council agrees with the task force recommendations relating to a third-party platform to ensure compliance with federal and New York State standards, enacted laws, and judicial rulings, and that the selection of such provider should be through an open and competitive process. The Council notes that, consistent with the task force recommendations, the police chief has already posted all existing policies on the city's website in an effort to increase transparency, and such practice shall be maintained. With regard to use of force and conducted energy control device policies, the City Council agrees with the general purpose and intent of the task force recommendations, and specifically those which prioritize de-escalation and emphasize alternatives to use of force. The police department currently trains officers on such practices and has policies addressing same. However, the council finds merit in further action and hereby directs the chief of police to review all use of force and conducted energy control device policies and to update such policies in a manner consistent with applicable law and the task force recommendations. The council also agrees that monitoring, reporting, and early intervention are of critical importance in maintaining adherence to use of force policies and accountability for individuals that do not. The police department currently monitors all use of force incidents and complies with reporting requirements for state database in accordance with New York executive law and applicable regulations. The department also has procedures in place for retraining officers and, where appropriate, disciplining such officers. The council also recognizes that the chief of police is currently implementing an investigation procedure for use of force incidents where such investigation would be performed by an individual outside the chain of command of the officer under investigation. Data analytics relative to use of force incidents and conducted energy control devices is imperative, and the council agrees with the task force recommendations to expand the scope of same. Task force recommendations relating to data analytics is more broadly addressed in section 4 below. The task force's recommendations relative to interagency cooperation during First Amendment assemblies is acknowledged. The police department currently has policies in place which govern assemblies and law enforcement responses based upon intelligence gathered by the department. Gear and equipment utilized by law enforcement is intended to serve a protective purpose and not a militaristic one. The supervisory staff of the agency requesting enforcement assistance under existing policy retains incident command over all officers assigned to the incident. The City Council is, however, mindful of the July 30, 2020 incident referenced by the task force and hereby directs the Chief of Police to review all policies relative to First Amendment assemblies and interagency cooperation to ensure clarity and consistency in situations where assistance from outside agencies is requested and to make necessary revisions consistent with applicable law and the task force recommendations. With regard to the task force recommendation that the police department be precluded from initiating no-knock warrants under any circumstance, the City Council recognizes the debate existing on this issue. No-knock warrants are and should be rarely, if ever, utilized. A no-knock warrant requires an application and review by a presiding member of the judiciary who must be satisfied that either evidence will be destroyed or disposed of, or that the officer's life would be endangered through the issuance of an announced warrant. However, the council is also aware that on March 3rd, 2021, the United States House of Representatives passed a bill entitled the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which, if subsequently signed into law, would, among other things, ban no-knock warrants in drug cases. The council therefore finds it appropriate to review this issue further and hereby suspends any determination until such time that the Senate has considered the measure and the bill signed into law. If and when passage of the law occurs, the council will require the Chief of Police to ensure that all policies of the department are in accordance and consistent with same. Regarding immigration status of individuals, the council finds that department policy already prohibits the detention of any individual for civil violations of federal immigration laws and limits the release of protected information to that which is legally permissible by law. Sharing of information relating to non-criminal immigration violations is currently prohibited. The council is aware of the Second Department case of People v. DeMarco cited by the task force and finds that current department policy is in compliance with same as it prohibits arrest based upon a warrantless request from federal authorities for a civil immigration violation. Section 3, Community-Centered Reinvention. The City Council acknowledges the task force recommendation that a collaborative arrangement be established, quote, where social workers work with, not for, law enforcement agencies, end quote. Equally acknowledged, however, is the fact that such collaboration currently exists. As well, collaborations specifically addressing other issues identified by the task force including mental illness, substance abuse, and homelessness, also currently exist. Such collaborations allow the department to assist in efforts in reaching out to the homeless population and offer basic human needs, including food, clothing, shelter, and other personal needs, as well as medical, mental health, behavioral health, and addiction counseling services. The City Council therefore disputes and takes exception to the statement by the task force that, quote, unhoused people are regularly subjected to harassment from police, end quote, and notes that the task force report is devoid of any factual support for such statement. The police department has long developed partnerships with community stakeholders, agencies, and nonprofit service providers, and was an original participator in the Saratoga Collaborative to End Homelessness, which subsequently evolved into the Assertive Outreach Team and includes collaboration with Shelters of Saratoga, Salvation Army, Saratoga Hospital, Addiction Care Center of Albany, RISE Housing and Support Services, Captain Community Human Services, New Choices Recovery Center, Adirondack Health Institute, Saratoga County Career Center, New York State Department of Family Assistance, and the Saratoga County Economic Opportunity Council. The police department is also actively involved with Mental Health Substance Use Disorder Partnership, which includes Saratoga County Mental Health, Healing Springs Recovery Community and Outreach Center, St. Peter's Addiction and Recovery Center, Mental Health Association of New York State, Saratoga Hospital, Catholic Charities of Saratoga, the Independent Living Center, Northeast Family Resource Center, and New Choices Recovery Center, among others. The department also works closely with Wellspring to provide advocacy and support services for sexual assault and domestic abuse victims, and to ensure that department training and policies reflect the most current information and best practices in addressing such issues. In addition to the myriad efforts of the police department, the council has also long provided financial and other support to numerous nonprofit and social service providers, including but not limited to the Saratoga Senior Center, Franklin Community Center, Shelters of Saratoga, Saratoga Center for the Family, and EOC Soup Kitchen. Such support has consistently been included in adopted city budgets, even during the current fiscal crisis. With regard to the task force recommendation that the police department terminate certain training, prohibit the receipt of certain retired military weapons or vehicles, and ban any outside department from entering the city with such military equipment, the council finds that current police department training is consistent with state and federal training guidelines, and the department does not participate in the Department of Defense 1033 program referenced by the task force. The council further notes that it does not have the authority to control the type of equipment or weapons purchased or utilized by county, state, or federal law enforcement, nor the authority to ban such entities from entering the municipal boundaries of the city. Regarding the recommendation to divert seized assets from criminal charges to community-based restorative groups, or alternatively, community service organizations, the City Council notes that expenditures from funds realized through asset forfeiture are strictly governed. And while the city has historically received only minimal funds through asset forfeiture, any and all expenditures must comply with applicable requirements and be used for law enforcement purposes. The City Council does agree with the task force recommendation to evaluate and implement an education pilot program that teaches officers the history of policing in America and the city, with an emphasis on the impact policing has had on diverse communities, and directs the Chief of Police to progress toward implementation of such a program. Section 4, transparency and accountability. The City Council accepts and agrees with the task force recommendations relating to data analytics. Identifying trends and patterns in police interactions through the collection and analysis of data is helpful in determining whether disparities exist and allows the department to make necessary changes in response to same. The New York State forms utilized by the department are limited in their data fields. However, the Chief of Police has since created new procedures and data fields to more thoroughly capture information in line with the task force recommendations. Consistent with those recommendations and the actions already implemented, the Chief of Police is hereby directed to continue and expand the collection and compilation of data relating to all departmental investigative activities and to categorize those by types of calls and stops, and to indicate the race, national origin, gender, and demographic information of involved individuals, excluding any personally identifying information, and to make such data publicly available. The Chief shall further ensure that department policy is consistent with such directive and applicable law. The Council will consider, if and when budgetary appropriations become available, the creation of a new position of database manager as recommended by the task force, or alternatively, the expansion of duties under an existing title subject to compliance with the city charter and New York civil service law. The City Council further accepts the revised complaint form and instructions recommended by the task force and located in Appendix I and J, and hereby directs the Chief of Police to implement same and to make available on the city's website. With regard to the task force's recommendation to implement a civilian review board, the City Council recognizes the history and debate which has surrounded this issue and finds that while merit may exist for such a program, further review is necessary. Title VI of the city charter vests the Commissioner of Public Safety with the, quote, jurisdiction, supervision, and control of the governance, administration, disposition, operation, and discipline of the police department and its officers, end quote. Such authority would seemingly include that which the task force recommends be provided to the proposed civilian review board, and as such, the City Council may be limited in its ability to act upon such recommendation. There also remain questions regarding the impact such a board would have on existing collective bargaining agreements, including those between the city and the Saratoga Springs Police PBA, Lieutenants, and Administrative Officers Unit, and specifically whether any conflicts exist between the procedures proposed to be under the authority of a civilian review board and those contained in the aforementioned agreements sufficient to require negotiations with the respective unions. Likewise, review of the recommended civilian review board's authority, process, and procedures will be necessary to confirm that same do not conflict with or run afoul of the applicable requirements of New York State Civil Service Law, including in particular Section 75, and to additionally ensure that the rights to due process of any individual who may be subject to civilian review are not unduly or unlawfully restricted. The City Council further finds that certain provisions of the proposed civilian review board, as set forth in Appendix G, also require additional analysis prior to any action or determination. For example, the task force recommendations appear to limit civilian review board's authority to addressing only those complaints which are received, quote, from a resident of the city, end quote. Such provision fails to address complaints which may be received from individuals who do not reside in the city, nor does it allow for the ability of the board to initiate its own review and investigation. Other areas warranting analysis and comparison against alternatives include the scope or type of complaints which a civilian review board should investigate, whether subpoena power is necessary and or appropriate, whether authority should be limited to an advisory recommendation or expanded to include ability to discipline, the composition and qualification of members and whether such members should be appointed or elected, training requirements, the ability to retain experienced investigators and or independent counsel, and importantly, a determination of costs associated with implementing a civilian review board. The Council is aware of a recent New York State Bar Association publication indicating that the funding required by certain municipalities that have implemented a civilian review board ranged from as little as $75 per officer to as much as $5,000 per officer. Given the number employed by the city of Saratoga Springs, such amount would translate to a potential budgetary impact of between $5,775 and $385,000 annually. For obvious reasons, such range and possible funding would need to be sufficiently narrow prior to the City Council taking any action. Ultimately, any implementation of a civilian review board would potentially involve renegotiating union contracts, amendments to the city charter, and even litigation. Prior to engaging in same, the council finds it appropriate to more thoroughly review and define the purpose, scope, and function of a civilian review board, and therefore defers any determination until such review has been completed. Section 5, next steps. As indicated, the city charter provides the Commissioner of Public Safety with authority and control over the police department, including policies, rules, regulations, and orders, and to ensure that members of the department receive necessary and proper training. In accordance with the charter, the council finds that any committees or advisory panels recommended by the task force to assist in implementation of the directives contained in this resolution shall be as established by the Commissioner. The council strongly encourages the Chief of Police and the Commissioner of Public Safety to utilize any and all available community resources and advisory input deemed necessary to assist in such implementation. With regard to the action items identified in Section 1 through Section 4 of this resolution, the Chief of Police shall report to the City Council and the public on the status and progress of same at the first regular City Council meeting in December 2021, and shall thereafter include such relevant information in the department's annual report, which shall be available for public view.
Thank you, Vince. Any comments from the council?
So with regard to just a summary of the next steps and the items for discussion, we have to discuss and determine how we are going to incorporate an action plan for the issue relating to a civilian review board. And just as a reminder for further action, the special City Council meeting of next week on the 23rd and the following week on the 31st. And the implementation requirements imposed upon the chief and the commissioner. And so we'll open it up to, as the mayor said, discussion on the resolution and thoughts and input from council.
Thank you. Any comments from the council at this time?
I have a lot of thoughts, but I've been following this process very closely since August. I've seen all the task force meetings. I know what they've been working on. I've read their recommendations, from cover to cover, but I'd like to see what the City Council thinks.
Anything else from the council? You're muted. You have to unmute, Commissioner.
I guess I do have a few things I could chime in with, and then we'll see how the discussion evolves with the council, because I'm sure the public is expecting, some kind of feedback tonight from us. First, I would like to thank the task force and thank you, Vince, for your time over the last couple of weeks to walk us through some of the thinking in this, what I would call first draft of a resolution at this point in time. I believe the task force released their final document, the plan, on March 5th. I was made aware that it was released a few days later, and I've spent a fair amount of time with that document. That wasn't that long ago. And then meanwhile, Vince and our chief were busy kind of helping the council shape a resolution. And that also took some time. It would be inappropriate to release a resolution such as the one that Vince just read through tonight, our city attorney, without having first reviewed it with everybody on the city council. That's just a mere courtesy. You don't want a document out there that, I haven't read, or Commissioner Frank hasn't read, or anybody on the city council. So this is where we're at right now. This is why it wasn't released prior to the meeting. I want people to know that, there is a process that we go through, and we are also on an expedited process to move this document forward and bring it to a successful conclusion or a vote. That's the first thing I want to let people know. The big one that I wanted to also talk about was the Civilian Review Board. I have some edits, red lines that I'm going to want to contribute back to you, to you, Vince, to the rest of the whole council, because this is now our document to move forward. I gave you some feedback when we met the other day, and that's if we could come up with maybe a project plan, and I know we don't know what that's going to look like yet, to look at a civilian review board by, X date, let's say June 15th, June 1, I'm not sure exactly what the date is, to come back and let the public know how we might handle moving forward, evaluating and implementing a civilian review board, because this is something that will likely potentially could require a referendum based on the way our charter is written, a referendum addendum to our current charter. So, that was another thought that I wanted to put out there, or maybe discuss with the council. I don't know what it looks like right now. I wish I did. I'm not all knowing, but I think we're going to have to put together a group or a committee to evaluate that piece alone. And it may be something that's written and constructed with advice from maybe a judiciary, some legal minds, on how we might craft a good working civilian review board subject to appropriation for the city of Saratoga Springs. So that was one of my initial thoughts. There are several sections as you were reading through and I was following with you on my computer that I would want to contribute regularly, that they're subject to appropriation. There are some where we include that, and there are some areas, like we asked the chief to potentially set up classes to understand the history of policing, but we don't say subject to appropriation. We want to make sure that we're including language like that and that we're supporting our police department. If we're asking them to take on these extra duties, it's going to have to be done with money. I have more notes, but I guess at this point, that summarizes my initial thoughts about where we are today with this resolution. And, we're going to continue to work on it. And we do have 2 upcoming city council meetings to further address this before April 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would like to also suggest on the Civilian Review Board that maybe the council can come together. We each pick one person from the community and we put them a task together for them to come back to us within 60 days with recommendations on how to move this forward. But it's going to take some research on how we're going to do this, and we need more information at this point. So I would like to see that happen, and see if we can move forward. And how to move forward. I guess that's the question.
So I have a lot of thoughts on how this can be implemented, but most importantly, I think that it needs to be done in a way that there's accountability and people can take a look at what the task force recommended, and they can see, how we're following through on each one of their recommendations with the time attached to it. And I'm doing a lot of looking around in New York State, how other areas have done this and what's been successful and what hasn't. And I have been in touch with the task force since they put their recommendations out to get their feedback on how they'd like to see these implemented and what they think would be the best vehicle to do that with. But it needs to be done in a way that it's clear and simple to see bullet by bullet where we're moving forward, when they can expect feedback, deliverables, whatnot. I just think that's going to be key here.
Any other comments from the council?
Yeah, Mayor, I have a comment. Again, reading through the resolution, I think it's a pretty good resolution. I want to commend the task force for putting together a document. Again, keep in mind that this is a draft document, and I think the council really needs to look it over real good and have a little bit of time. I think that between now and the 31st, digest at least some of the recommendations that are in there. Again, I think it's a work in progress, and like any draft document, it's something that, obviously we're not voting on it tonight. There were a lot of good comments by some of the speakers, and I kind of look forward to listening to a little more public comment in regards to some of these recommendations. So again, I'm kind of keeping an open mind on this whole thing, and hopefully we can come to some good a good resolution with this document. But again, I want to commend the task force for doing what they did, and that's it.
Great. Commissioner Frank, you have any thoughts?
Yeah. Similar to what I had said yesterday morning, I think it's important because now everybody's seeing the resolution for the first time. The task force is seeing this, that the co-chairs of the task force have time to look at this and potentially at the next meeting come back to us, and because they came up with their recommendations, obviously. The city attorney has reviewed those and come up with some potentially changes in it. And I would really like to hear from the co-chairs of the task force too, so we can put this together and come with a document that's workable with everybody together. So that was my suggestion yesterday. It'd be my suggestion today, because I'm assuming many of the people who spoke already, this is now they're seeing this resolution out, so I'm sure they have many different questions on top of that. So now it's out there. But I definitely, I know they did their job and they gave us the recommendations. And many of us have watched the meetings and followed it. But now that this is actually out, they get to read the resolution, say, yes, this is what you guys are saying, but here's why we said what we said. And I think that makes sense. I'm only one of 5 people, but.
No, I agree. I think that's one of the things I was saying yesterday. I knew we needed another meeting. I didn't know if it should just be a public hearing or maybe a workshop, or we invite, as you said, the chairs from the task force to be a part of a workshop where we can do some back and forth Q&A. We're gonna have to spend, I think, a little bit of time to figure out exactly what the shape is of this next meeting. Because these are important meetings, the public is tuning in. The Civilian Review Board issue is certainly of interest. It should be pointed out that there was a recommendation in their plan on a Civilian Review Board, and we are not discarding that, but you had the task force had a lot of work to do. I mean, they looked at a lot of things, one of which was a Civilian Review Board. What I'm saying is I think this one needs a little bit more time and quite possibly does need to go to referendum. And that's something I would also, maybe want to discuss with the task force. So they understand where we're coming from. A Civilian Review Board is something that needs to be done right, needs to have adequate appropriations for it. But another meeting, however we want to frame it, I'm totally on board with that, whether it's a workshop with public hearing, with members of the task force. I mean, I think that sounds great.
It will be a city council meeting with public comment, and we could have the 2 task chairs there if you would like. But, the committee can actually be on the call. I mean, anybody can be on. It's an open meeting. But I'm not going to run it any differently than I'm running this meeting. So
yeah, I just think historically, if you look at whether it be a comprehensive plan, zoning changes, parking garages, issues that I think in many instances may pale in comparison to this. The difference between, it's been a city council meeting, but by having a workshop, and I'm not saying opening it up to 100 people, but there's 5 of us, and if we add 2 of the co-chairs or whatever, that's only 7 people, just so questions can be asked back and forth. And there may be things that we're not interpreting right for the task force, and there may be things the task force doesn't understand, from maybe the review of law and the charter and stuff. That's because if we're going to do a public comment, it's 2 minutes. It's a one-way conversation. That's my only.
Well, Commissioner, if you want to open up a meeting with just 2 people, we have 45 on this call. I think it would be taken as not a good thing to do.
No, I'm not.
I can increase the time, excuse me. I can increase the time that people speak, and we're going to discuss that, but I just, if we invite 2 people and not the rest of the public, then you might as well take me down the street and roll me over now.
Well, no, it's not what no, that's not what I said. The rest of the public can have public comment. I'm not saying that. But we have had hearings and public hearings before, or workshops before, where we've had hundreds of people there, but there was different groups that were representative. I think, and maybe I'm reading this wrong or misinterpreting it, and I apologize if I am, but I believe that the the committee as a whole has agreed to, some votes probably weren't 100% obviously, but if they had their chair people there, I don't think other people who want to comment on it one way or another would be upset with the co-chairs there.
Well, it might be if you had some no votes and they're not in the co-chairs weren't the no votes. I mean, I don't feel comfortable with that. I think it should be open to everyone.
No, it's open to, we can have a workshop open to everyone.
I think what Commissioner Frank is saying is that if we want some context or we have questions about the process and how the task force came to these recommendations, it would be helpful when we're on this item in the agenda to have the co-chairs there that we could ask those questions too and have those questions answered while we're discussing it.
I mean, we do presentations all the time for an hour where we'll have these professionals go through back and forth, asking questions, going back and forth. I don't see where this would be any different. We would just have the people who led this group, who put their recommendations to us, or their plan, actually, whether even recommendations, I guess their plan, and hear from them. But again, that was just the resolution. I think it's the first draft, as Commissioner Sciarrocco said, and the other commissioners. But I just think it's hard to have a one-way conversation where, like most of the people I think that probably commented tonight, they would have probably changed their comments based on what we just showed them. So I just think, that.
Well, that's why we have the meeting. I also had the extra meeting for that.
I think it's important for the public to understand as well that although I know I was watching all of these task force meetings happen and I was following the work that they were doing, that was not a process that the city council was meant to be involved in. That was meant to happen independently from the city council. So it's not that we're just looking at these, or for me, I guess I can only speak for myself, I'm not looking at these recommendations and seeing them for the first time. I followed the task force work. They have been going through their recommendations subcommittee by subcommittee for quite some time now. So these are not a surprise at all. I anticipated what the recommendations were going to be by following the process, but this is when the city council is meant to weigh in. We were not meant to weigh in when the process was underway.
Any other comments from the council at this time?
Okay, so I think based on feedback already, we have a chat open on Zoom. We should probably consider a workshop, and that is a council meeting. And I know Zoom is tough. I mean, it's tough. Like, this just adds to the stress of trying to get city business accomplished, trying to do it, from our 8 different places, our homes, our offices, our home offices. But if there is some way we can get members of the task force, whether some people voted no and some people voted yes, I think, was it a majority vote? I mean, so the document passed, it's been sent on to the city council. If the task force could maybe regroup or, I don't know, do a quick vote and see if the 2 co-chairs coming before the city council to maybe walk us through their thinking on the document, and maybe we having the ability to ask them some questions. That might be a great way to handle our next meeting, included with public comment, but open to the public. But, I think that's what we're saying, right? I don't know.
I do just want to point out, though, that all the recommendations that are in the document that they produce, it notes on there when they had any dissension. They had consensus on almost everything that they put in their recommendations, and when there wasn't, they put a little asterisk, and so if it was a majority vote and if everyone voted for the recommendation, or there was a few instances in which that didn't happen, that's all noted in the document. So
you know what? I got to tell this John Schroeder guy who's making these comments to just stop. It's rude and it's disrespectful, and this should be turned off. You don't know me. I've read the document twice. I am trying to move this forward and help the public understand how we are going to get to a final document that we're going to vote on. Thank you very much. And now I will ignore him. But I wish this was a feature we could turn off. We don't accept this kind of comment at public meetings, and we should not be accepting it here now on the public record. We're trying to get on with city business. However you want to do the second meeting at this point. Mayor, I was trying to help the public, maybe have a workshop. It is not up to us to ask the task force to present. The task force could have easily said to us, here are the recommendations and we'd like to present them to you. We're doing the best we can under a time constraint. So let's make the best of it. Let's engage with the public, I would hope in a positive, constructive way, and see what we can do between now and April 1st with coming up with a final resolution that the council and the public feels as comfortable as we can feel moving this forward. Thank you.
There does seem to be some disconnect between the end of like how the task force ended and their recommendations that they made and then how it was given to the city council. That transition seemed to be very unclear, or at least it was unclear to me. And I certainly wish that we had had more than a week to sit and read, you know, really in some 200 pages of recommendations and results. I think it would have been nice to have a little bit more time, but I know that we would have liked more time for all of this. This wasn't the timeline that we set up. This was the timeline in the EO, and we're doing the best we can, but we are trying on our end to make this a success. And I know how much time and commitment and energy and emotion went into the task force and the work they did over the last 7 months. And certainly I know that the council wants to give it the same time, energy, and attention.
Sure we do, but we don't need to be subjected to constant snarky criticism. You know, I absolutely agree with you, Commissioner Dalton, and this is very important work, and I'm taking it very seriously, as I know the rest of the council is.
Thank you all. I just want to say that this is, you know, police reform is going to go on after April 1. Right. Everybody has to understand that, right? So this is a big first step that we're taking here, but it has to go on. We can't possibly reform everything in 7 months. It just doesn't work that way. So we have to have a plan going forward, and I think that that's what we're doing with this resolution, that we're gonna be working, the Commissioner of Public Safety, working with the chief to continue on these reforms. It doesn't end April 1, and that's the thing that I have to, you know, let the public know, that this is going to continue on, and this is a process. It's a dynamic document that we have to submit something April 1. Okay, that's what we're going for, and then we can continue to work through all of these changes. So that's the gist of where we have to go. So we do have to come up with something. We'll discuss how we want to run the meeting on next Tuesday. You know, if the council wants a workshop, let's do a workshop. If the council wants the 2 chairs, I'll talk to the 2 chairs. So we can work this out, but I agree with Commissioner Madigan. We all live in the same community. We work really hard here at City Hall, and we shouldn't have to take the abuse of anything. We're doing the best that we can do here. So let's all work together, as this council has since day 1, and we'll bring this home the best we can. But to know that police reform has to continue after April 1. It doesn't end. So with that, are there any other comments from the council?
Yeah, well, I have other comments, but I'm not going to make them.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Let's end on that note. Okay, so thank you. We are going to move on to my next item on my agenda. So I'm going up to discussion and vote annual salary approval for the Saratoga Springs Housing Authority. The Saratoga Springs Housing Authority will be closing out its fiscal year on March 31, 2021. Saratoga Springs Housing Authority must submit an operating budget for the board approval on March 25th for the upcoming fiscal year. Staff salary approval is needed by the City Council for the upcoming fiscal year, beginning on April 1, 2021. I move that the City Council approve the Saratoga Springs Housing Authority staff salaries for 2021 fiscal year. This is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The matter passes. My next item is discussion and vote appointment to the Saratoga Springs Housing Authority. I am reappointing Steve Sullivan for a term effective 4/1/21, expiring on 4/1/26. I move that the City Council approve the appointment of Steve Sullivan to the Housing Authority for the term effective 4/1, expiring on 4/1/26. This is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes. My next item is an appointment to the Civil Service Commission. I'm appointing Angela Rella to complete a term for Nurit Schoenstein for the term effective 3/16/21 and expires 5/31/24. Angela is an attorney with experience in a wide variety of commercial litigation, currently working pro bono to assist clients with family and immigration law issues. She also has degrees in electrical engineering, English literature, and law. Prior to becoming an attorney, she worked as a civil service employee for New York State Department of Taxation and Finance and the New York State Insurance Fund. I move that the City Council approve the appointment of Angela Rella to the Civil Service Commission for the term effective 3/16/21, expiring 5/31/24. This is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The matter passes. My next item is an appointment to the Design Review Commission. I will be reappointing Leslie DiCarlo for a term effective 3/16/21, expiring on 6/30/25. My next item is an appointment to the Design Review Commission as an alternate. I'll be appointing Chuck Caputo to fill a vacant alternate position. His term is effective 3/16/21, expiring on 6/30/22. Chuck Caputo spent his career of close to 30 years in the human service field. He retired in 2019. He was born and raised in the area and has an educational background in public administration, healthcare, and business administration. And he has volunteered for several community groups and has lent a hand to help plan fundraisers, implement new programs, establish systems, and write policies and complete strategic plans. He has served on the board of several organizations, including Saratoga Pride, for the past 2 years. Most recently, he has served on the Police Reform and Reinvention Task Force to help the city comply with the governor's Executive Order 203. My next appointment is an appointment to the Planning Board and alternate. I'm appointing Chris Papia to complete the term that was previously Jason Doty's. Chris's term is effective 3/16/21 and expires 12/31/21. Chris recently retired after a 21-year career teaching in the public high school. As an educator, he taught various science courses, ran clubs, and other activities with students. In addition to his high school career, he was an adjunct professor at the Long Island University. Most recently, he has served on the board of Saratoga Pride. Chris has a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Master's in Biology and Secondary Education. Number 7 is an appointment to the Zoning Board. Tonight, I am appointing Emily Arnston Bergman to the term effective 3/16/21, expiring on 12/31/27. Emily was born and raised in Saratoga Springs and is a dedicated community activist, mom, and wife. Emily is a product of Saratoga Springs Public School, and she earned a degree in government from the University of Maryland. Emily served in many senior positions and advised several elected officials and political candidates, including working as an analyst for a prominent public opinion research firm and managing several federal election compliance for senators and members of Congress while at a major international law firm in New York, in Washington, D.C. My next item is an announcement. The 2002 Open Space Plan update. The City of Saratoga Springs is proud to announce the long-awaited update to the 2002 Open Space Plan. It has been almost 20 years since the city's last updated the Open Space Plan. The revision will build on the previous plan by revising those sections that no longer accurately reflect the character, needs, and goals of the community. The 2021 Open Space Plan update will establish criteria for the expenditure of bond funds, inventory remaining open spaces, as well as to identify special areas for protection, preservation, conservation, parks, and both active and passive recreation. The Open Space Update Plan is being developed by the city's Administrator of Parks, Open Space Historic Preservation and Sustainability, and guided by the Open Space Plan Steering Committee. The city staff will facilitate the planning process with the technical assistance from MJ Engineering and Land Surveying PC. A dedicated project website has been created to keep the community informed of the ongoing process. ongoing public engagement opportunities, and provide ongoing information about the effort. Today, the community survey was launched looking for public input. Community members and residents and businesses can participate in the survey through a link provided on the project website at www.SaratogaSpringsOpenSpaces.com. The survey will close on April 16th, 2021. My next item is an announcement, Woodlawn Shelters of Saratoga building update. Shelters of Saratoga has informed me that the Navigation Center and Code Blue at Woodlawn are no longer in effect. Code Blue will be at a Delphi site only as needed. On March 22nd and 23rd, the Woodlawn building will be used as a pop-up clothing supply to help the homeless with their needs. This will be the only use until the end of March. And that concludes my agenda, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Frank of Accounts.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item is award of bid, extension of bid for laboratory services to CNA Environmental LLC. Upon the recommendation of the Department of Public Works, I move to extend the bid for laboratory services to CNA Environmental LLC for an additional year under the same terms, conditions, and prices as originally listed in bid 2020-06. And that's a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes.
And thank you, Mayor. Just basically a re-announcement relating to the temporary outdoor seating. At our last meeting on March 2nd, the City Council passed a resolution for the temporary outdoor seating to start yesterday, March 15th. I would like to, again, remind all of our local restaurants, if they have not already submitted your paperwork to obtain your permit, please do as soon as possible. We would like to, especially in the areas like Fila, Henry, et cetera, get all the people who were there last year to get their paperwork. We have sent them emails and phone calls today, and we're reaching out to them. It's easier for DA Collins to just do the barriers all at once versus piecemeal, especially on Fila, Caroline, and Henry Street. So we do, again, ask all of those restaurants and pubs and whatever in the area that had them last year to please get hold of us so we can get the paperwork done and get that done as soon as possible. And again, I'd really like to thank DA Collins for helping the city with the placement of the Jersey barriers. And that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner. On to Finance, Commissioner Madigan.
Thank you, Mayor. So the first item on my agenda is an update city finances, including the American Rescue Plan and New York State VLT aid. This is a recurring topic, and tonight I do have some news, and it's reasonably good news. As you all know by now, the federal government has delivered the American Rescue Plan in the amount of about $1.9 trillion, which includes $350 billion for state and local governments. Based on a report issued by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, which is attached to the agenda, but I don't have enough room to bring it up on my screen along with notes and Zoom. But if you guys do, you can look at that report and the public can look at that report. This results in $7.7 million allocation for the city of Saratoga Springs. The allocation is based on a modified CDBG type formula, as well as the city's classification as a metro city. I have been in contact with the offices of Senator Schumer and Congressman Tonko to obtain further clarification of the statewide allocations listed in the attachment. The proportions of some of the allocations are a bit difficult to understand without maybe a better, clear explanation of the formula. And I'm hoping that some answers will be forthcoming soon. If you look at Leader Schumer's plan, the one that I attached, you'll see that Saratoga Springs is receiving probably the least amount as a metro city in the entire state. And I'm very grateful, 7.7 million, but and I know they do this based on sort of average median income and, poverty rates, but even last year when they were looking at the community development block grant modified formula, we were coming out with significantly more funds. And I would say the communities around us weren't quite coming out as high as they're coming right now. I'm sure we've all seen the articles where, Albany is setting up committees to figure out how to use all the money that they're receiving. They're receiving 85 million. I want to say Troy, 45 million, Schenectady, 59 million. In some cases, some of these cities are receiving more than their counties are receiving. Glens Falls is receiving maybe 14 million. What?
They're receiving 12. I mean, it doesn't,
Something, yes.
Yeah, well,
So
it has to do with the CDBG, and that's they just have more people at that poverty line than Saratoga Springs, so that's why they receive more.
Yeah, I do. I know that. I'm just trying to understand the formula better because last year when the HEROES Act passed, we were and that was a $3 trillion package. This is a 1.9 trillion. We were at a higher number, 14 million, which seems almost spot on. And, the communities around us were at not 85, 59 million. Anyway, so I am looking to understand the formula better. The city is no less grateful for this support, and we are sure that there is a reason for the distribution. But I kind of want to know a little more detail, an explanation. Albany, okay, so I do have more details, receives 11 times the amount of Saratoga Springs at 85.28 million to our 7.7 million, while the population is only 3.5 times that. But there are other things that come into it other than CDBG modified population, it's poverty and average salary. Our 2021 budget, just so you know, does, and I've said this before, include $5 million in federal aid. So we've received about 2.7 more than what we budgeted to make the 2021 budget work. As we move on to New York State VLT aid, the Assembly did sort of vote and support full restoration of the aid, but unfortunately the Senate has not yet. So this is I've been feeling very optimistic about it. We are working on that. We are working on reaching out to the Senate and the Senate Finance Chair and talking to Carrie Warner, and even having her reach out. She's always invaluable to us when it comes to restoring this aid, and also reaching out to Senator Jordan so that we can give this our last push to make sure that VLT aid is fully restored. It's still very positive that the Assembly has included it in their one House bill. But we want to make sure that the Senate includes it too. And I think that's about all. Oh, city sales tax. The city did receive its first sales tax distribution for 2021. We're currently running at about negative 9.4% over last year, 2020 collection. So we're down about $75,000 in sales tax for January. We'll know more as we'll trend better, or, be able to project better as we know more about what might happen with the race course and Saratoga Performing Arts Center. I don't know if anybody has any questions, or if there's anything they're curious about, or anything they want me to look into between now and the next meeting.
I think, going forward, I do believe that SPAC and NYRA are both looking to have some kind of spectators. So that's going to bring people to our city. So hopefully we can start opening those two venues up.
That's true. I kind of, maybe misspoke a bit. We're already at a certain percentage that they can open. Is it 10%? Yeah. And more people are getting vaccinated. So that's extremely helpful. So hopefully we'll see those numbers increase, which will be, of course, better for our city revenues.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Item number 2 is an announcement, department meetings regarding 2021 budget amendments. So as I had stated numerous times during the 2021 budget season, the budget was designed to prepare us for challenges while being amendable as new revenue and expense information is available, and maybe, some opportunities unfold. So we definitely have some new revenue information coming in. Not a whole lot new on the expense side. We're all trying to manage our expenses at this point in time. So as previously stated, the city is going to receive the $7.7 million from the federal government. And we're hopeful still that we'll have full restoration of VLT aid, although that is by no means a done deal. So To this extent, I plan to meet with each of the department along with the budget director and the director of finance as needed and my deputy to discuss budget difficulties that departments are having right now and look at a few priorities so that we can, evaluate what we might be able to do with the $7.7 million. We do need to prepare for those raises that are going to come for all our city employees at the end of December. That was one of the things that we did commit to them in the resolution. So we'll cost that out. And then, of course, we go into 2022 raises the next day. So we're going to have raises on December 31st and on January 1. So we'll cost that out. We included $5 million, but, it seems like it's time. I know we really drastically cut expenses. There may be a few things that we're able to do for each of the departments. So we'll be reaching out to have those meetings. And I look forward to them, to be honest with you. It's time to it's been kind of a really stressful 2020 and even 2021. Maybe we can start to do some better relationship building here as news improves and vaccines are being rolled out to the public. It's all very positive. Item number 3 is to set a public hearing for the New York State Power Authority Energy Services Program for the Master Recover Agreement for Streetlights, project number 1277. And I think maybe 5 minutes, if that's appropriate with the clerk.
We can do 6:55 on April 6th.
Thank you very much. This is another program that will bring Saratoga Springs accolades on the smart city, especially if we can have this merge in with our fiber project. We'll have great infrastructure out there. And also it's a good one for the environment, converting our lights over to LEDs. So more information on that at our next city council meeting. Thank you, Mayor. That completes my agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner. On to Public Works, Commissioner Scirocco.
Thank you, Mayor. First item on my agenda is a discussion and vote. This is authorization for the mayor to sign a contract with Mobark LLC for the Mobark Hog tub grinder. The Department of Public Works is happy to announce the purchase of a new Mobark 3400X horizontal grinder to be delivered this summer 2021. As you know, the Department of Public Works offers curbside leaf and lawn debris pickup for the residents of Saratoga Springs. This service begins in early spring and does not stop until the first snowfall. This is not only beneficial for the residents, but also the environment. The leaf and lawn debris is picked up throughout the city and transported to our DPW Wyville Avenue facility, where it is then created into compost and obviously sold back to the residents or whoever wants to purchase it. With the purchase of the Mobark 3400X horizontal grinder, the Department of Public Works will still provide leaf and lawn debris pickup for many years to come. And I can tell you the old tub grinder, I believe, is over 20 years old, and it's pretty much on its last leg out there. And I want to thank the city council and finance in particular for sitting down with us and working with us to actually make this happen. It was a pretty good sized purchase, and I just want to thank the council and everybody who got on board with this. So I'll make
go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Therefore, I move for the mayor to sign a contract with Mobark LLC for Mobark Wood Hog tub grinder, and at a cost of $564,182.50. And funding is in the 2021 capital program. And I put that in form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, this was, needed, and I'm sorry, a long time coming. Talk about a bad time for such a piece of expensive equipment to just sort of go on you. But, we do make some revenue off our compost, and this is a service our residents expect. And I'm glad that we're able to move forward on it now. So Thanks for being patient, Commissioner Scirocco.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks. Thank you. Thank everybody.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The matter passes.
Second item on my agenda is discussion and vote, authorization for the mayor to sign an intermunicipal agreement between the County of Saratoga and the City of Saratoga for the management of single stream recyclables collection. This is an intermunicipal agreement between the city and Saratoga County. The city agrees to assume responsibility for the management of the collection of single stream recyclables at the county's recycling center on Wyville Avenue. For the city's on-site management and oversight of collection and removal of recycled materials, and scrap metal, Saratoga County will pay $35,000 yearly to the city. Therefore, I move for the mayor to sign the intermunicipal recycling agreement between the County of Saratoga and the City of Saratoga Springs for the management of single-stream recyclables collection. And I put that in the form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes.
Third item on my agenda is discussion and vote. This is approval to pay invoice number 014338 to SRI Fire Sprinkler LLC in the amount of $5,093.12 for sprinkler inspection. DPW had a contract with SRI to perform quarterly sprinkler inspections in city buildings during 2020. As a new vendor, SRI made a mistake of believing that they could perform a total number of quarterly inspections regardless of the year they were performed in, and provided some inspections in 2021 without a new contract or a PO in place. One of these inspections was at the request of Risk and Safety for the inspection of City Hall for the insurance renewal. DPW is working with SRI to provide new quotes and have a PO in place for 2021. Therefore, I move for approval to pay invoice number 014338 to SRI Fire Sprinkler LLC in the amount of $5,093.12 for a sprinkler inspection, and I put that in form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes.
Fourth item on my agenda is discussion and vote. This is the authorization for the mayor to sign a contract with DEC for Phase 1 Street Tree Inventory and Urban Forest Management Plant Grant Award. This is a contract between the City of Saratoga Springs and the New York State DEC for the Urban Forestry Grant. The New York State Master Contract for grants includes the grant contract requirements which must be achieved by the city in order to fulfill and receive funding from the DEC. The work plan section of the contract defines the contract requirements, which includes objectives and tasks and performs measures. The objectives include performing and developing the street tree inventory and management plan, duties of the partner on the project, which is Sustainable Saratoga, to be performed, outreach and educational efforts, and long-term support initiatives. The MCG also outlines the terms and conditions, payments and reporting process, and additional contractor obligations, representatives, and warranties. The MCG receives approval from the New York State Controller's Contract Submission System, and that was on 3/3/2021. Therefore, I move for the mayor to sign a contract with the DEC for Phase 1 Street Tree Inventory and Urban Forest Management Plan Grant Award, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Again, this was for that $50,000 grant that we got to actually do an inventory of trees in the city. So
Is there a match to that, Commissioner?
no match. No.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes.
Awesome. Terrific.
The fifth item on my agenda is discussion and vote. Authorization for the mayor to sign a contract with Paletti Stone for asphalt/concrete. This contract with Paletti Stone is a piggyback contract off the Saratoga County for asphalt concrete in the amount not to exceed bid proposal unit price. The Saratoga County bid package has been previously distributed with the agenda. Therefore, I move for the mayor to sign a contract with Paletti Stone Corp. For asphalt/concrete, and I put that in form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? The matter passes.
Sixth item on my agenda is authorization for the mayor to sign a contract with Paletti Stone Corp. For crushed stone. This contract with Paletti Stone is a piggyback contract off the Saratoga County for crushed stone in the amount not to exceed the bid proposal unit price. Saratoga County bid package has been previously distributed with the agenda. Therefore, I move for the mayor to sign a contract with Paletti Stone Corp. For crushed stone and put that in the form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes.
Seventh item on my agenda is discussion and vote. This is approval to adopt the 2021 water and sewer rate resolution. The water resolution for 2021 includes no charges from the 2020 resolution. There are no rate or fee increases for water customers in 2021. Sewer resolution, as a reminder of what was discussed earlier at the public hearing, the water rates will be unchanged from 2020 to 2021. For the sewer resolution, there will be a $4 increase in the basic service charge due to the significant increases from the county sewer district. Therefore, I move for the approval to adopt the 2021 water and sewer rate resolution, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The matter passes.
The 8th item on my agenda is appointment to the Climate Smart Task Force. Tonight I'm going to appoint Ben Foster. Ben is the president of Fostera LLC. It delivers green energy and clean transportation leadership to commercial, government, education, and utility sectors. He is a champion for programs that have a positive impact on the environment and create robust outcomes for buyers, investors, and the clean energy market at large. Mr. Foster has worked on projects in over 500 jurisdictions across the United States and in China at various stages of development, from planning through operations. As an industry leader, Ben has managed over a dozen regional collaborative efforts to improve best practices and deploy them domestically and internationally through the federally funded projects, industry white papers, technical reports, best practice guides, and hands-on technical assistance and training. I think that will be a good addition to the Climate Smart Task Force.
Great, thank you, Commissioner.
And I'd like to add one item to my agenda.
Sure.
Good. And this is an announcement. Flushing water distribution system.
Mm-hmm. Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that as a motion. Yes.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. This is an announcement for flushing, the city's flushing of the water distribution system. And I would just like to let the residents know that beginning on Monday, March 22nd, the Department of Public Works will begin flushing the water distribution system. To deliver the highest quality of water for residents of Saratoga Springs, the water distribution system is flushed during springtime and once again in the fall. When flushing the distribution system, our DPW employees also take the opportunity for routine maintenance and service of the fire hydrants that are throughout the city. Again, if you notice some discoloration of your tap water, simply run the cold tap until the water clears. For any residents that may have a question, don't hesitate to call the Department of Public Works dispatch at 518-584-3356. That's 518-584-3356. And I believe when I talked to my deputy today, I believe we're going to be starting on the east side and working to the outskirts of the city. We did put the message board over here on Lake Avenue, so I think residents will see that. Also, there's going to be some signage throughout the city as we progress into the other outskirts of the city. Again, it's part of the maintenance of the water distribution system to clean those pipes out. It flushes them out and it cleans them out. It makes them,
Makes them clean.
Gives us good quality water. Let's put it that way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But I did want to say we have lots of message boards now too. So
well, we do have them.
Yeah, so we spread those out throughout the city. So
right. I think we're gonna use a couple of those.
Yeah, I did see the one out there today, Commissioner. It looks
they stuck it out there today. Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner?
No, that's it. Nope.
Okay. Thank you. Over to Public Safety, Commissioner Dalton.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on my agenda is a COVID-19 update, relatively brief update. Our numbers remain low, which is good. They are continuing to go down. We have a 2.2% positivity rate. There are 229 active cases in Saratoga County. In the city of Saratoga Springs, we have 38 active COVID cases. And in the county, I believe there are 14 people total hospitalized. But I just want to remind everybody that, to give it some context, these were the numbers approximately that we had around this time last year in April and May, when we were being so careful. And so I just want to remind all of us even though we don't want to hear it, we've got to keep being safe. You have to keep following all the safety protocols while we allow for these vaccinations to continue. We know how quickly this can go from kind of decent to bad. It happens in a hot minute. So everyone just needs to keep making the right choices and getting vaccines as soon as they're eligible and available to them. In terms of vaccination distribution, Supervisor Gaston is going to give us kind of an overview of what's going on there. So I'm going to leave that for her. And then I'm going to go on to the second item on my agenda unless anyone has any questions. Oh, good. Okay, second item is a discussion and vote to accept a donation. This is a donation to the fire department in the amount of $25 from Marjorie and Jerry Ryan in memory of Dolores Walker. I make a motion for council approval to accept the donation to the fire department in the amount of $25 with great thanks and appreciation to Mr. and Mrs. Ryan. Thank you. This is a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The matter passes.
Thank you. The third item on my agenda is an announcement, the Public Safety Annual 2020 report, the Public Safety Annual 2020 report. It's one of the public to know that the 2020 Public Safety Department Annual Report has been sent to the mayor and to the City Council and provided to the City Clerk's office as required by the charter. I have also asked the IT department to put it up on the city website. So that will be up for everyone to peruse. It gives a really comprehensive overview of the entire department, police, fire, code, everything. So I encourage the public to look at it, and I want to thank both the chiefs, Chief Dolan and Chief Crooks, for all the time and hard work they put into doing that. It's a really helpful public tool for people to have and kind of see where the department's at this year. Then the last item on my agenda is a discussion and vote, increase school crossing guard hourly rate. I'd like to increase the school crossing guards hourly rate to $15 per hour. Currently, they're at $9 per hour, and the last hourly wage increase was on December 15th, 2015. This is not an easy job or a fun job. We're standing in the street, in the snow, and the wind, and the rain, directing traffic, directing a lot of people who want to get to where they're going. And it also, though, provides a critical layer of safety for our kids who are trying to get to school in the morning and leave in the afternoon. So I think it is really about time that we pay them a little more than $9 an hour if we want to retain the crossing guards. So I make a motion for council approval to increase the school crossing guard hourly rate to $15 an hour. This is a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think, thank you for bringing it forward. It's a reasonable rate for the work that they do, and we should be paying minimum wage. And I know we've done work in other departments to bring some of the salaries up, part-time salaries to minimum wage too. So it's about time we have everything on an equal paring. So thanks, Commissioner.
So may I ask, Commissioner, I can't hear, I tried twice. What is the new rate?
$15 an hour.
Michelle, can you say that? Commissioner Madigan, can you say that? I can't hear it when she says
Yeah, so in the resolution, I believe she did state it will be $15 an hour.
Okay, 15. 1-5. Okay, thank you. Thank you. For some reason, I can't get that. So that's fine. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The matter passes.
Thank you all so much. And that completes my agenda.
Okay, thank you. On to the supervisors. Supervisor Beach.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. My first item on my agenda is to go over the Government Review and Efficiency Committee for an update. That committee has now met for the third time this year, and its goal is to review the county's policies, procedures, local laws, and code to try to see if we can bring some things up to date and make our government work a little bit better and more efficient. At the last meeting in March, we did three main things. And the first one was to set up a subcommittee to review the ethics code and the ethics review for the county. We found out that the last time it appears that the ethics code or review was looked at Saratoga County was probably around 1990 or so. So we really need to update that. A lot of things have changed since then. And so I am going to lead a subcommittee with myself and two other supervisors to review that policy, procedures, and the state law that we need to abide by for our ethics code. So that's the first item. The second thing that we're going to look at is records management. We have had lots of discussions at our meetings about records management. There is a fair amount of state law and regulation on how we are to manage our records, and we adopt the state laws as they come over, that we will be abiding by those. We seem to do a little bit with records management, but we don't really have a really good comprehensive records management plan or policy. And so departments do their own thing, and there's things that are kind of stashed in certain places. And I've heard a lot of different stories, and they're not all great about what we do with records management. So there's a lot of issues on that. I appointed a subcommittee on this as well out of my committee, which is going to be led by Gene Raymond from the town of Edinburgh. I believe Supervisor Gaston is also on that subcommittee as well. One of the things I'd like to do potentially is talk to you, Commissioner Frank, and your department as to how the city is dealing with records management, because we certainly need your help. And we would appreciate learning a little bit about how the city does what they do. I know you've gotten a lot of grants and things in your department.
Yeah, we would definitely, I mean, Nancy Wagner has been working with both us in finance, and she would be the key lead to this, and we'd be more than happy to set you up with her.
Okay, I will reach out. I appreciate your assistance. Thank you. The third subcommittee we're going to do is on our budget.
Sorry, I was muted, Supervisor.
Oh.
I wanted to just say, while I had the opportunity, that Nancy truly is very good and expert in records management. So, even just a conversation with her is going to educate you on all things records management. So it's good that we have a resource like that here in the city.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And anytime I've ever asked her for any records from the city, I mean, she's always responded very quickly, got me what I needed. So I appreciate what she does. And I'm glad.
I wouldn't mind meeting with you when you meet with Nancy, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I would like to be, it's just, as a librarian in my background in records management, I actually enjoy these projects that I get to work on with Nancy.
Sure. Not a problem at all. So it'd be good to learn a little bit about what the city does. And I know you guys do a good job. So thank you for that help. And again, third on our government review is going to look at the budget process. We're going to review all of our policy, our local laws and procedures relating to the budget. Jonathan Shaw from the town of Clifton Park was appointed the chair of that committee, as he is the chair of the Law and Finance Committee. Just makes sense as his committee handles the budget. And we're going to continue reviewing our local laws. I'm taking that on and looking at our county code and trying to keep that up to date, maintaining that, and see when we have to we need to do changes. So a lot of work to continue, and I'll keep people posted as we go forward. Second on my agenda is just a quick review of the 2021 legislative program. The county adopted its 2021 legislative program today at our board meeting. And just a couple of highlights out of that. We do a state and a federal legislative program. So from the state level, a couple of things is ending mandatory sales tax diversion for state purposes. It appears as though the AIM funding, aid to municipalities, is withheld from county sales tax disbursements to make those payments. And we would like the state not to do that any longer. Second is, of course, restoring our VLT aid. So we have that on there as well. And thank you, Commissioner Madigan, for reporting on that. Enacting a no new unfunded mandates legislation, which is kind of on our agenda every year. We want the state to help fund us with their unfunded mandates. Supporting enhancements for the New York State Historic Tax Credit. Restoring funding for Veterans Peer-to-Peer Program. That's one of the things that our county does for our veterans, and it appears as though that funding has been at risk since last year. So we'd like the state to continue to fund the peer-to-peer program. And last, on the federal side, really the main one is supporting the federal broadband infrastructure expansion funding, which is on both the national county platform as well at the state level. So hopefully we can get some more progress on that as well. So we voted on that today, and normally we would meet with our state legislators after we vote on this, but this year I don't believe that's going to happen due to the pandemic. So we have that resolution out there, and we'll communicate it accordingly. Third on the agenda is just a quick update from Buildings and Grounds. Just wanted to note that we passed a resolution again today, extending our lease with the Gateway House of Peace in the town of Milton for another 5 years with an option for another 5-year renewal. That's just a continuing resolution from the last 10 years. They provide great services for end of life, and we're glad that we're able to continue that arrangement with the Gateway House. Fourth on my agenda is a quick update on the NACO virtual legislative conference. Normally this time of year, we're actually in Washington, D.C., and sometimes we don't make our first meeting in the month of March due to us being there for our NACO conference and meeting with our legislators. But this year, we're doing it all virtually, of course. Just of note, on March 8th, the Community Economic and Workforce Development Committee met, which I serve on. And again, our main goals there are continuing to advocate for improved and enhanced CDBG funding through HUD, workforce and affordable housing funding, expanding the eviction moratorium due to COVID. And we had speakers from the U.S. Department of Labor, Community Development Block Grants, and several congressional staff gave our committee an update. So I also serve on the IT Standing Committee. I was not able to make that meeting due to other commitments, but our conference lasts for a couple of weeks now, so we'll have a few online things that are going on. It's not over yet, so maybe there'll be another report at the next meeting. But again, glad to be serving on NACO and working toward these goals on the community economic and workforce development. And I do want to just make one addition tonight. The last meeting I'd mentioned that the county was considering a veterans funding program. It actually wasn't on the agenda today when we started, so I didn't have it on my agenda for tonight, but we added it later on in our meeting. We did approve $52,500 in total funding at the county for veterans support to the communities. The maximum amount each community can receive is $2,500, and it can be on any item that honors veterans throughout the year. It is a matching program, so you do have to spend the money to get the money, but you have to work through our veteran services offices. And since we just passed it kind of at last minute today, I don't have a lot of details about how you get the money. But at the end of the day, I'll work with your office, Mayor, and see if we can get something for you.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
And that's it.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Gaston.
Thank you. The first item on my agenda is a COVID-19 update, which Commissioner Dalton covered most of the numbers. I would just reiterate, while our numbers are looking good, unfortunately, we're seeing a significantly higher rate of transmission through social and small gathering events than we were for a little bit. So it's important to keep in mind that when we're engaging with individuals in our community or in our household, we need to continue to follow the guidance as appropriate to make sure that we're reducing that transmission rate as much as possible. We're doing much better, but we got to keep it up for a little bit longer. Today at the board meeting, we did approve a major contract with the DIRAD call center. It's located in Clifton Park. They've been doing some of our incoming calls and registrations to the vaccine interest line. And Commissioner Cools and his staff have been doing random spot checks, are very pleased with the work that they're doing. We're pleased to be supporting a Saratoga County business at this time. And we have expanded that so that they will also be doing some of our outbound appointment registration calls. This will free up our public health staff to be more in the community and do some of the other work in the building as opposed to making calls. So we appreciate that came up in very short order, and they've done a lot of work to adjust with our needs as well. At this, yes?
Before you go on, I don't know when you're going to go on to your item 2. I did want to interact with you on the COVID-19 update.
Okay, I have just a little bit more, and then will that be okay?
Yes, I apologize.
Awesome.
I didn't know if you were going on or not going on. It was a little awkward. Sorry.
No problem.
All right.
So at this time, about 63,000 Saratoga County residents have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. 33,000 have completed the series. We use the phrase completed the series now because we have two-shot series and one that just requires one. We are not getting a lot of Johnson & Johnson in Saratoga County, at least through the county itself. And when we are getting it, we are primarily focusing those doses on individuals who are homebound or who are at significant risk of not returning for a second dose. A lot of that would be individuals in shelters, either because they are currently unhoused or domestic violence, et cetera. Our Vaccine allocation continues to be extremely limited from New York State. Your description of the funding disparity from Albany to Saratoga Springs, those numbers remind me a lot of the difference in vaccine disparity between Albany and Saratoga Springs. Our population is not significantly lower than Albany County. Our essential worker, senior, and other populations are also not lower, and in fact are higher as a percentage of our community, but we are not receiving the same number of vaccines, and that continues to be a problem. As a result of this, all of the vaccines that we are distributing go through the interest list. This is true whether they are in a pop-up, whether they're delivered by EMS, or whether they're at the public safety building. The only exceptions to that are when we are provided on occasion doses through the state that are required to use for certain populations. For instance, we've been given a set of doses that we are required to keep on standby for nursing homes. We get doses that are required to be passed through to OPWD facilities and the like. We continue to advocate on a relatively frequent basis. Both myself, the commissioner with DOH, and our county administrator and chairperson with the state to request more vaccines, although it's less request and more demand, I think, at this point. Supervisor Veach can affirm that today I actually had to run out in the middle of the board meeting because I got a phone call from the executive chamber, and I am terrified of missing out on the opportunity to get any additional vaccines in our community. So I ran from our board meeting in order to get that. Unfortunately, it wasn't a significant increase, but that's what we have. We do continue to meet. I have also formally requested through FOIL and through formal government processes, both the formula that is being used by the governor's office and Larry Schwartz, who is the volunteer in charge of this, to determine how distribution is being made. We are being told it's being made per population and per particular group. That does not seem to be the case to me. And I want to know also where the vaccines are coming into our county from other areas. We're hearing information about them coming in through pharmacies and other locations, and we don't want to duplicate efforts. If there are populations already being reached by certain populations, that frees up public health to go into other areas with the few vaccines that we do have. Again, all individuals, regardless as to their eligibility category, are requested to sign up at SaratogaCountyNY.gov/vax, VAX. You can also sign up by calling 518-693-1075. That is our official registration call center with DIRAD. All of those go directly into the same interest list. And what we do is we sort by eligibility category. So if we receive doses, like 200 doses for a certain population, we can pull the names that are eligible under that category. What that means is it's really important if you've already registered and you're now eligible under a new category, we would ask that you go back in and re-register. We will remove duplicates as necessary. But if you've already registered, let's say because you have a comorbidity, and now you are registered or now you are eligible because you're a public-facing employee, go ahead, submit it, include all the registrations, not just the new one, and we will remove the older entry. And that way, if we get a certain allocation, a specific set of doses, we can pull from any of those categories and you'll be eligible for as many as possible.
Can I ask a quick question about that? Sorry. And I should know this, but just to clarify, because a few people have asked me, can you put yourself on that list only when you're eligible, or can anyone sign up for that list even if they're not in eligible category yet?
At this time, they need to be in an eligible category.
Okay, cool.
All of the eligibilities have been listed on the webpage. When you go to the registration form, any current eligibility is there. If you believe that you are eligible and that status is not listed there, please reach out to me, or any of the commissioners, mayor can reach out to me and let me know. We have tried to adjust it as needed to make sure that everyone could register. The one last note, and then Commissioner Madigan or any other questions. We are also, Commissioner Cools and I have been meeting with our local facilities, our businesses and our sites, including NYRA, SPAC, a lot of our wedding venues, et cetera, to both answer their questions with regards to some of the guidance that's coming out from the state before reopening. We want to make sure that we provide them with the best guidance that we can in supporting and also advocating where there are questions or going to be barriers for their being able to support these events, because obviously they are integral to our economy. Okay. Commissioner Madigan.
So, I don't know if you're the right person to send these emails. I know I've been sending you emails, and I know our Risk and Safety Director, Marilyn Rivers, have been sending you emails. How does a pod get formed? I just texted you an article. You probably haven't had a chance to see it, but from Reuters that says that U.S. employers with large workforce and locations that have enough space to maintain social distancing can consider setting up temporary vaccination clinics at the workplace, says the Center for Disease Control and Prevention as of Tuesday. It seems like now that government workers have become a population base that is now eligible for the vaccine, it would be really helpful, whether it's set up at the county or at City Hall, in the music hall, or at the city center, I don't know where, like a pod for them. It would really reduce all our employees. I mean, maybe it's throughout the entire county, right? There's plenty of government employees, the time off, the travel maybe to Plattsburgh or a Utica or a Potsdam, or, spending time trying to find one at a pharmacy. The problem with the pharmacies is, even if these other uses are, you have to be 60 years old, I believe. Is it still 60 years old?
Correct. Any vaccinator in the state, excepting pharmacies, are open to all eligibilities. Right. Pharmacies are still limited to 60 and above. Yes.
60 and above. So there's just so much confusion as to where you can go and where you can get your vaccine. It seems like we've got a population base big enough in some manner that it would be great to get a pod, but I don't know if you're the right person to talk to about this, or if I can help you advocate for us getting a pod, if that's what we want to call them, or a pop-up to do, government employee vaccinations.
So there are approximately 5,000 individuals that are classified as public-facing workers in Saratoga County as a whole. We are not getting 5,000 doses a month,
right?
Much less a week. I will say that I did email the council both the information from Commissioner Cools regarding eligibility, how to sign up. Every public-facing government worker that has registered in the vaccine interest list, at least as of this afternoon when I left the county, has been scheduled for a vaccine this week.
Right.
So we're not getting a lot of dose, and I say that, and now 3,000 more are going to register. So, I recognize it, it still may take a minute, but we are working very quickly. And obviously, there are categories that are highest priority.
Right.
Our seniors, particularly those with comorbidities, are our highest priority for vaccination because they're highest risk of comorbidities, mortalities or morbidities. That said, about 70% of our senior population has already received at least one dose. So we're getting that done. So, we're working on the list. The commissioner is working very hard to pull those as we have doses available. But again, one, it requires us to have the doses. But we are doing a pod at the end of this week that includes public-facing workers that have already registered on the interest list.
Okay.
If you haven't already, I strongly recommend it. I sent the email and a template letter. Depending on the location, they may require different proof of eligibility. However, the commissioner has indicated that the guidance he's received is that a letter from an elected official, department official, indicating that a person works for them should be sufficient in almost every circumstance. And if you find out it's not, please reach out, because we want to make sure to get that assistance.
Sure. Can I maybe offline take this up with you about, you said there's a pod or a pop-up coming up Friday this week for government, but they need to register. Right. I want to be able to maybe communicate that to some of my public-facing
every pod, every distribution we do through the county is done off of the vaccine interest list. Gotcha. There are no pop-ups or pods that people can walk up to.
Gotcha.
If there are, I don't like the term, but I'll say extra doses is what a lot of people hear at the end of a distribution. Those go to the next people on the list in that category. No one should be wandering around offering doses. And if they are, I would like to know about that, because they've been strictly directed not to. But the goal is to keep it there. It provides equity across anyone who signs up has equal access to it. But it also allows us to keep that information. And it allows us to present it in a way to the state, because when we say, this is the number of our population that's not getting reached, that's a much stronger argument for us to make if we have that number that we can present. to DOH and the executive chamber that we need to protect. So
Can I just make one quick clarification? Because I think it's one of the sources of confusion. Just, it happens again and again. When you are eligible, the eligibility group, just because they're eligible doesn't mean they have a vaccine waiting for them. And so that is really, like, to me, sums up the whole problem, and the getting that out there and managing expectations every time there's a new round of eligibility has been such, a challenge, because you think when you're eligible, there's a vaccine waiting for you, and there just isn't. So that, and then I have one question for you, which is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but a lot of people request that and want me to help them find it. Primarily, from what I understand, it's really just for convenience. Are there any pre-existing conditions or, anything medically that would force you to only be able to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? Because my understanding is there are not. Any of the vaccines, you could get any.
I will say I am not going to give you a solid answer to that, because I do not have the qualifications to do so, and I would not want to make such a statement. It is the information I have is the protection and the impact of the vaccine is very similar / identical. Obviously, Johnson & Johnson's a different type of vaccine, but that's a different nerd discussion. There are some individuals, especially if they've recovered from COVID, they may be advised to only receive one dose of vaccine. To my knowledge, whether it's Johnson & Johnson or something else doesn't matter. In the end, the protection is going to be the same. So from a lay standard, the antibody response, the immune response is going to be the same.
Yeah, I think it's on the guidelines of how we're administering these vaccines. There's nothing in the guidelines from the state that says we should only be giving the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to this, a certain group.
The guidance from the state indicates that Johnson & Johnson should be prioritized for communities that are less likely to be able to receive the second shot, or where there are significant barriers or logistical issues, such as if they are homebound, homeless, live in shelters. A lot of our EMS is using them when they're going out to individuals' homes, because obviously the logistics of doing that again prevent them from being used in other capacities. So that is where the priority's been thus far. We are still getting very limited amounts of Johnson & Johnson in Saratoga County, like very small. So that'll become, I think, more of an issue later. I do understand that some pharmacies on occasion have Johnson & Johnson. So if someone is specifically looking for it, those are probably the best places to get them.
In terms of a state site, the only site that I know of is the Javits Center. So if people, want to go on the state website and look for an appointment there to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they can. But thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Any other questions on that end?
Well, thank you.
Great. The second item on my agenda is regarding the Executive Order 203 report. The Board of Supervisors did pass today at our board meeting a resolution accepting unmodified the recommendations of the Executive Order 203 compliance group as they were submitted in January. I had previously suggested amendments to it to be part of the consideration. Excuse me. That is soda, not COVID. Previously requested amendments. A lot of the language is unlike even the city's 203 report, which provides direction and makes plans. Unfortunately, the 203 report uses a lot of phrases such as suggest that you consider or encourage someone looking into something. I think that does not meet the intent. Obviously the state has to determine whether we meet what the order was, but I just don't think that meets the intent of it. And so I did vote no based on that, although I do think many of the recommendations that were included, even when wrapped in much softer language, there was noting a collection of demographic data, which was mentioned tonight, training in bias and de-escalation, which there is currently none in the county, nor the collection of demographic data, as well as body and vehicle cameras, which is something that I know was looked at the county previously. Obviously, in our fiscal situation, I don't expect us to go out tomorrow and equip all of our vehicles and deputies with cameras. However, I did expect us to develop a timeline or a plan for looking at this and determining how it could be implemented. And that is not a part of our not a part of the report that was passed today. I will say I did appreciate the inclusion in the report, a recommendation of increased mental health service response in lieu of deputies where it's appropriate, as well as mental health support for the sheriff's department, which I think is beneficial both for the community. They can work through things as they see them or experiencing them. But as someone who grew up in a law enforcement family, I know that that can be helpful in a lot of respects. But unfortunately, the way that the language was so vague and non-directive, I could not in good conscience vote for it. However, it did pass generally. The third item on my agenda is a local law regarding third-party food delivery service fees. Supervisor Veach and myself sat on the committee where this was brought up, and we received many comments from businesses and associations supporting businesses in Saratoga Springs and throughout the county. This would only during declared emergencies and for the 90 days after cap third-party food service delivery fees charged to food establishments. It would cap at 15% for delivery fees and no more than 5% for any other fees, often referred to as marketing fees. The local law also indicates that they may not reduce wages or garnish tips in order to comply with the law. I think this is really helpful, especially I know a lot of our restaurants, they've seen the charges go up as they're working to stay alive and stay in business during COVID. And I was happy to support this at both the committee and the board level today. The fourth item on my agenda is, as Supervisor Veach said, it's NACO conference month now, I guess. Normally it's just a week. I have been to the Geoinformation Specialist, GIS. I think I just messed up that acronym, apologies. The GIS committee and the Energy, Environment, and Land Use committees. I sit on both of those committees, as well as the Resilient Counties committee. Recently, the things that I am most proud of, and I think most beneficial to Saratoga County and Saratoga Springs itself that have worked through that process, is support for a National Historical Sites program. It's run by the National Park Service, but this will standardize the application and support process. Given Saratoga Springs and Saratoga County is the location of so much of our American history, I think this is a good way to perhaps support our community, be listed in the National Park Service, and bring some individuals back to our community to check that out. Additionally, I was a very proud supporter of a resolution through the Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee, which supports legislation at the federal level right now for the development of an equity map. One of the things that we have learned in COVID and that we've talked about right here with vaccines and with the rescue plan money is that disparities are not often as visible as one might think. And a lot of that data resides at the federal level. So this legislation that requires an equity map and a screening tool would be available in short order, and it would provide all of that data and documentation to local governments and county governments to help support what we're doing and moving forward. But it would also support things like if there are emergency fund distributions, vaccine testing distributions, education funding, public works dollars. I saw Commissioner Sirocco. It would support the distribution of that to make sure that it's really being allocated where it most needs to be. And I think that would support a lot of our arguments as we're advocating on both the state and the federal level. This would not cost local governments any money. It's all at the federal level. It really just requires them to collect and pass down that data. So that's that. The last thing is in Resilient Counties, we discussed a program sharing resources and experiences, both responding to COVID, but also other emergencies, because a lot of the times counties and cities and other forms of government are out on their own in responding to this, and having a best practices resource would be helpful. There are a lot of things the city has done, the county could take to heart, and other locations. Having those all in one location so that every time we're not reinventing the wheel would be extremely helpful. And that concludes my agenda.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other business from the council?
Thank you, Mayor.
Then we are adjourned. Thank you.
Public Affairs programming on Look TV is underwritten by the generous support of Pinnell's Restaurant, classic Italian American food since 1922, and Stored Tech, Technology solutions for computers, networks, and phone. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
1922, Babe Ruth debuts with the Yankees. WGY signs on air. Exterminator wins the Saratoga Cup, and Pinnell's Restaurant opens its doors for the very first time. For 5 generations, Pinnell's has been preparing delicious Italian food, served in a comfortable home-like setting where everyone is welcome. 90 years of authentic Italian recipes, 90 years of the freshest ingredients, and 90 years of the finest classic Italian dishes, all made daily by hand. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga dining tradition since 1922.
Most cybersecurity firms deal only with prevention, the systems that block hackers and viruses. Stored Tech knows the root cause is actually good people doing bad things. So we offer a security training program which includes certifying all participants to show they understand the basics.
Technology solutions for computers, networks, and phones. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.